11 in the evening in London, and it's 7 a.m. in Panmunjom, where in just over 24 hours, the leaders of North and South Korea will be meeting for the first time in a decade. Top of President Moon Jae-in's agenda will be persuading Kim Jong-un to give up his nuclear weapons. Officials in Seoul say that at this point, they will not be raising Pyongyang's alleged human rights abuses. So, what does this mean for the people of the peninsula? Our Seoul correspondent Laura Bicker has been out with 1A Group to find out.
Huddled on the South Korean shoreline, a group of activists are trying to send a message to North Korea. They funnel enough rice into the bottles to feed them for a week. The other contents, such as ointments and USB sticks, are just as important as the food, she says. They put K-pop music and South Korean soap operas on the USB sticks. Many are defectors themselves and hope to encourage more to leave, or even to rise up against the regime.
The people who get these will feel like they are grabbing a lifeline from the water. When I was in North Korea, I remembered how desperate I was to grab anything I could. It brings me joy when I think about how happy they will be.
They wait for the currents to be just right. Then the throwing can begin. "Let's save a life" is the cry as the bottles splash down. They fear politicians at the centre of the upcoming summits have forgotten about the people of North Korea. And yet here, at the heavily fortified border between the two countries, a lot will depend on a South Korean president whose family fled the north and a North Korean leader who was chosen to rule.
Soldiers from North and South Korea come face to face here every day, and yet their leaders haven't met in over a decade. When they do, is Kim Jong-un really prepared to give up his nuclear weapons? And what might he want in return?
At the weekend, Pyongyang declared it would not be testing any more nuclear weapons or intercontinental ballistic missiles. So is this a good sign ahead of the talks?
Everybody's got their own motivation to try and make this work. As long as Trump, Moon and Kim Jong-un can all spin the result in a way that's going to look good to their own internal stakeholders, then I think there's a good chance we'll see something pretty significant come out of all of this.
As the little packages of aid make their way north, there are high expectations in the south that after decades of tension, perhaps, for now at least, peace is on the horizon. Laura Bicker, BBC News, Seoul.
Thanks to Laura for that. Well, let's stay with that story. Joining me now is Harry Kazianis. He's Director of Defence Studies at the Centre for the National Interest in Washington, D.C., where it has been a very busy day. Good to have you with us. Now, you're looking very closely at the issue of North Korea. How do you feel about all these goodwill gestures, as they've been called, made by the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un?
Well, that's what they are. They're gestures. We have to remember that the North Koreans haven't done anything just yet that fundamentally changes the status quo that essentially almost brought us to the brink of war last year. I mean, just because they're stopped testing missiles doesn't mean they can't within 2 days' notice, start testing missiles again. Just because Kim Jong-un isn't detonating nuclear weapons at his nuclear testing grounds doesn't mean that he can't do it again. In fact, actually, we've had reports from 38 North, which is a very prominent North Korea Watcher website, that they've actually already dug other tunnels in the western side of that complex. So there's nothing here the North Koreans have really done that is a game changer. It's a very, very media-savvy strategy to sort of rehabilitate the North Koreans, but nothing's changed fundamentally, at least not yet.
Okay, so let's say you have President Trump's ear. What would your advice be going into those negotiations?
Very simple. What the Trump administration absolutely needs to do here is if Kim Jong-un wants to have a summit with the Trump administration, they need to be very firm on what the preconditions are. There's really only one precondition. If they want the summit, Kim Jong-un has to tell Donald Trump exactly how he's going to denuclearize. There needs to be a roadmap. And that roadmap needs to have intrusive inspections. It needs to show denuclearization in a set amount of time. I'd say it'd have to be done within 18 months to 2 years. If the North Koreans won't tip their hand, won't show their cards at all, and just want to get the summit for, to get that photo op and to get that legitimization, the Trump team needs to walk away, period.
But what about, I mean, other countries have nuclear weapons, perhaps not using them, have come to an agreement, for example, with the United States or other Western powers. Why can North Korea not be one of those countries?
Well, I think it's a very good question, to be honest with you. For whatever reason, the Trump administration has set out as denuclearization being the goal. Now, there are other ways to go about this. I mean, just to give you an example, there is a possibility that these talks won't happen, that the Trump administration will not get Kim to sort of create a timetable where he will give up his nukes. And that will actually present the Trump administration to be in a predicament where it is going to have to choose either by force to get rid of Kim's nuclear weapons or to essentially contain North Korea. And that would actually be a place where, they would have to essentially agree by de facto to allow the North Koreans to have nuclear weapons. And that is actually a very real possibility.
Harry Kazianis, thank you very much, joining us from Washington, D.C., where it has been a very busy day for the Trump administration.